I'm Carolyn Rye, Chair of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach, and I hereby call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. on this 13th day of October 2020. Pursuant to the state of emergency related to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Governor's executive orders, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended by the Virginia General Assembly, and the School Board's April 7, 2020 emergency resolution, the school board and selected staff members will meet in person at the school administration building. However, at this time, it's impractical and unsafe to allow other persons to attend the board meeting due to physical distancing and safety precautions related to the pandemic. Members of the public will be able to observe this meeting through live streaming on vbschools.com, broadcast on VBTV Channel 47, and on Zoom. Please note, Ms. Victoria Manning is not present at the meeting due to a family matter. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Present in the school board chambers are Ms. Rye, Ms. Melnick, Ms. Anderson, Mr. Edwards, Ms. Felton, Ms. Holtz, Ms. Owens, and Ms. Riggs. Attending via Zoom is Ms. Weems and Ms. Hughes.
Thank you. Please join me now all in a moment of silence. And please stand as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, having no awards and recognitions this evening, we will move to Agenda Item 6, Adoption of the Agenda. I make a motion for a modification to tonight's agenda. Consent Agenda Item D, reimbursement of employee and legal fees, is to be moved to closed session and possible further action item, which would be item 18. So is there a second for that motion? Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand.
Ms. Hughes, how do you vote?
I'm sorry, I heard yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. So that brings us to the superintendent's report and Dr. Spence.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. Here are a few items of interest for you and our families to know on this October 13th. First, I am very proud to announce that for the 12th consecutive year, we have reached record levels with our on-time graduation rate, which now stands at 94.2%, and we have the lowest recorded dropout rate of 2.9%. And of course, that compared to the state rate of 92.3% is exceptional. Important areas to note is that the division's on-time graduation rate has been increasing steadily from 84.2% in 2008 to 94.2% in 2020. Since 2018, the graduation rate for our African American students has increased by 1.3%, with the dropout rate increasing by 1.4%. And students with disabilities as a group maintain their graduation rate, which stands at 91.7%. So thank you to everyone, especially the class of 2020 and the teachers and staff who helped our students succeed in a year that looked like nothing in the past, and yet we still progressed. Number two, each Monday for the next 3 weeks from 6 to 6:30 p.m., our families can get to know their school resource officers, also called SROs, during a Zoom panel discussion featuring members from the VBCPS Office of Safe Schools and Deputy Chief William Dean, who commands the operations divisions of the Virginia Beach Police Department. Our SROs are uniformed Virginia Beach police officers assigned to schools to help create a safe and positive learning environment, and they build and maintain successful working relationships between police, administrators, students, parents, and staff. As the board knows, all middle and high schools have an SRO on site. However, they're also available to respond to our feeder elementary schools when needed. And all of this is another example of our commitment to ensure that every student is achieving at their maximum potential in an inspiring and challenging and safe learning environment. For a schedule of schools and a link to our Zoom meetings, visit vbschools.com. 3. As a reminder, VB Schools continues to provide breakfast and lunch meals at no charge to all children age 18 and under at all of our schools, regardless of individual eligibility or whether they receive instruction virtually or in person. At this time, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has approved waivers to continue to provide these meals in this fashion through December the 31st. However, it is critically important that families still fill out the free and reduced meal application, which will allow continued meal service if the waiver status changes in 2021. These applications must be submitted every school year and are based on income. To apply for free or reduced price meals, families must fill out one application per household, and these applications are available online at www.schoolcafe.com or from your child's school. And I'll note here too for our families that these applications also impact our Title I funding, and so this is critically important that we gather this information from all of our families. So please take a look at www.schoolcafe.com. Thank you, Madam Chair. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. That brings us to approval of meeting minutes, agenda item 8. We have 2 sets to approve tonight, beginning with the September 17th, 2020 special school board meeting. Any modifications to these minutes? Okay, hearing none. Motion to approve. Mrs. Anderson, second. Mr. Edwards. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. And 8B, September 22nd, 2020 regular school board meeting. Any modifications to these minutes? Okay, hearing none, a motion to approve, please. Mrs. Melnick, and a second, Mrs. Riggs. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you all. Okay. Item 9, hearing of citizens and delegations on agenda items. The school board will now hear comments on agenda items from citizens and delegations who signed up with our clerk prior to the meeting. In-person speakers will be called first, followed by speakers participating through Zoom or by telephone. Speakers should begin speaking once their name is called. As a reminder, each speaker has 4 minutes to present and will be given a 30-second warning before time expires. Once the speaker's time has expired, the speaker should stop making remarks and the next speaker would be queued to speak. Please keep in mind the school board invites the public to also submit comments through our group email account, which can be found on our website. So, Madam Clerk, with that, if you could introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first speaker tonight is Tracy Leakrid.
And welcome.
Great. Hello. Okay. Hi. Hi, Dr. Spence and the school board. Thank you all again for your time and your service. Dr. Spence, thank you for the video message. I posted something on Facebook and I'm going to send you a thank you for that. I appreciate it and I won't thank you. I think it's important to acknowledge the anxiety and everything. So thank you for that. So it's hard to get away from current events. I thought that this would be a light talk because I'm here to talk about Filipino American History Month, which the school board had approved to recognize in 1994 when Ferdy Tolentino A friend of mine was on the school board, second Filipino American to serve on the Virginia Beach school board, and his mom is a nurse. Luckily, she's retired now, and you know, Dr. Spence's wife is a nurse. A lot of the medical community in Hampton Roads and throughout the world are nurses and on the medical staff. And I don't know if you guys know, there was a story maybe 2 weeks ago that talked about Filipino nurses specifically being, I don't know what the percentage is nationally. Maybe it's 5% or something like that. I'm not sure now because I meant to research it again just to give you the right stats. But although they're like a smaller percentage of the national healthcare force, they account for 30% of deaths in this country because of COVID. I will email this to you all if you have not seen that research. So I really didn't come in here today to be angry, but I think it's appropriate for me to advocate again for the health and safety of our community, and to put it in a different sense, the decisions that you make with school reopenings in person and the nonsense about virtual learning not being real learning, which is astonishing to me, can directly affect our resources in this community, healthcare resources. You're either going to kill them off or you're going to exhaust them, as they already are, globally, not even locally, but globally, exhausted from people's willful ignorance. I'm the on-site sub at Windsor Woods. This is what I carry with me at all times, because I actually was the nurse's assistant appropriately twice this week, which, could endanger my parents who are 80 and 88.
30 seconds.
I have goggles, I have a gown, I have wipes, I have a face shield. My aunt yesterday brought me a face shield because she wasn't sure if I had that. And I've used this all. And there are medical grade gloves. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I carry it with me at all times so that if I'm called to help a student,
And that is time.
I'm prepared. Please keep this in mind as you make your continued decisions on the reopening
Thank you.
of schools. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that was the only in-person speaker.
Thank you. Okay, consent agenda. We have 3 consent items this evening. A, resolution, Filipino American History Month. B, resolution, Bullying Prevention Month. And C, resolution, Disability History and Awareness Month. So Mrs. Melnick, would you please read the first resolution?
Sure. Whereas one of our nation's greatest strengths is its vast diversity, which enables Americans to see the world from many viewpoints. And whereas Filipino Americans are an integral part of that diversity. And whereas Filipino Americans are the second largest Asian American group in the nation, and Virginia Beach has the highest percentage of Filipino Americans in Virginia. Whereas through the study of their contributions, all students may find role models whose participation, commitment, and achievement embodies the American spirit and ideals. And whereas the school board of the City of Virginia Beach recognizes the importance of multicultural diversity education within our school division. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach officially recognizes the month of October 2020 as Filipino American History Month. whose theme is the history of Filipino American activism. And be it further resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach encourages all citizens to support and participate in various school activities during Filipino American History Month. And be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board, adopted by the school board of the City of Virginia Beach this 13th day of October, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Melnick. Mrs. Felton, would you please read the second resolution?
Yes, I will, and thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution for Bullying Prevention Month, October 2020. Whereas school bullying has become an increasingly significant problem in the United States and Virginia, and whereas over 20% of the youth in the United States are estimated to be involved in bullying each year, either as a bully or as a victim, and whereas students who exercise bullying are at increased risk for depression, anxiety, sleep difficulties, low academic achievement, and dropping out of school. And whereas bullying can take many forms, including verbal, physical, and most recently in cyberspace, and can happen in many places on and off school grounds. And whereas it is important for Virginia Beach parents, students, schools, counselors, teachers, and school administrators to be aware of bullying and to encourage discussions of the problem as a school community, and whereas the school board of the City of Virginia Beach has developed a policy and anti-bullying to encourage positive behaviors and to eliminate bullying behaviors. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public Schools, through sustained and dedicated efforts, has implemented programs for all employees and students that recognize a deep commitment at all levels to raise awareness of bullying and its prevention. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach recognize the month of October 2020 as Bullying Prevention Month in the Virginia Beach City Public School. And be it further resolved that the issues of bullying and its prevention be discussed in Virginia Beach City Public Schools classroom during this time. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board, adopted by the school board of the City of Virginia Beach this 13th day of October 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Felton. Mrs. Weems, are you prepared to read the next resolution that was emailed?
Yes, of course I am.
Wonderful.
And first, I'd like to say, since the main purpose of this resolution is to increase public awareness of persons with disabilities, I want to thank and congratulate our Special Education Advisory Committee and OPEC for putting on a great virtual resource fair last week. They had great topics that normally would not have been covered, in person, and it was a great turnout. And they just job well done, folks, job well done. So now the Disability History and Awareness Month, October 2020. Whereas Americans with Disability Act of 1990 was founded on 4 principles: inclusion, full participation, economic self-sufficiency, and equality of opportunity for all people with disabilities. And whereas the Virginia General Assembly has designated the month of October as Disability History and Awareness Month to increase public awareness and respect for persons with disabilities, to inform the public concerning their many contributions to society, and to emphasize the abilities and rights of persons with disabilities rather than their exceptionalities. And whereas public schools, institutions of higher education, the business community, civic organizations, and other interested entities are encouraged to promote Disability History and Awareness Month in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And whereas the Virginia Department of Education's 2019-2020 Virginia State Quality Profile reported the Virginia Public School Division served 175,524 students with disabilities under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and Virginia Beach City Public Schools reported the division served 8,344 students with disabilities under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public Schools believes in having the highest expectations for students with disabilities and believes that students with disabilities make significant academic and social progress when educated as appropriate in general education environments. And whereas it is necessary to increase public awareness, knowledge, and understanding of disabilities, the rights of persons with disabilities, and to foster a culture of mutual respect and equal opportunities for all in our schools, businesses, and communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach officially recognizes the month of October 2020 as Disability History and Awareness Month. And be it further resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach encourages all citizens to support and participate in the various school activities during Disability History and Awareness Month. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Weems. Uh, So now I will entertain a motion to approve. Mr. Edwards, a second. Mrs. Melnick. Please, all those in favor of these three resolutions, raise your hand.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Okay, action item 11. Personnel report, administrative appointments. Motion to approve. Mrs. Anderson, a second. Mrs. Melnick. Discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Dr. Spence, I believe you have a few announcements for us.
I do, yes, ma'am, and thank you, Madam Chair. So as with previous administrative appointments during this unusual meeting circumstances, we will be bringing them back to you in a future meeting for a proper introduction. But in the meanwhile, I would like to recognize a few folks, and I'll begin with Michael Combs. Hopefully you recognize Mr. Combs. Michael has worked as an assistant site manager and computer systems analyst in the telecommunications industry, and a project manager in the telecommunications industry. And his current position with us is coordinator of telecommunications in the Department of Technology. And this evening, I'm very pleased that you have accepted our recommendation for Mr. Combs to serve as the next director of technology in the Department of Technology. So congratulations to him. I'd like to next recognize Dr. Sabrina Lindsay Law. Dr. Law has served in Virginia Beach with distinction as a teacher at Lansdowne High School, as a middle school dean in Loudoun County, as a teacher at Salem High School, and most recently as a school improvement specialist at Kempsville Middle School. This evening, I'm pleased you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the coordinator of equity and opportunity in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Which is in the office of the superintendent. And then finally, Jason Nichols. Jason Nichols has served as a police officer in the California Highway Patrol. He has a background in digital content and website development and radio, as well as recently a marketing director for Norfolk Fest Events and here locally at Title Quest. And this evening, we're pleased that you've accepted our recommendation for him to serve as a coordinator of public relations in the Department of Communications and Community Engagement. So congratulations to all three of those individuals.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. We wish them all success in their new positions. So agenda item 12, and we have a number of information items tonight, beginning with tutoring support for students. And we will await our two presenters.
would you like me to jump forward and take care of policies since we can do that while we're in? Oh, they're coming.
We're good. Okay. But thank you. All right, so we're welcoming tonight Miss Natalie Allen and Dr. Admon Alexander.
Good afternoon. It's been a long time since I've seen you all. I'm happy to welcome and invite up Dr. Admon Alexander, Director of Family and Community Engagement, to talk about the important work that is being done around virtual peer tutoring. As you can imagine, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, this has become more important than ever, but this work started long before last March. Dr. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Hello. All right. Thank you, Ms. Allen. Good afternoon, Madam Chair Rye, Vice Chair Melnick, Dr. Spence, and board members. I am Dr. Admon Alexander, the Director of Family and Community Engagement in the Department of Communications and Community Engagement. I'm excited to share our virtual peer tutoring initiative. This is a work in progress to connect Virginia Beach City Public Schools middle and high school students with trained peers who can support their learning. This cross-departmental collaboration has included students, teachers, and various offices as reflected on this slide. This collaborative effort is the essence of innovation and has led to additional academic and social-emotional support measures for middle and high school students. Today, you will be hearing from Dr. Carrie Gant, teacher at Kellam High School, and Ms. Jennifer Pisapia, teacher at Princess Anne High School, who will give you background and information on the process of the virtual peer tutoring program. The purpose of the virtual peer tutoring, or we call it VBT program, is to create a positive, future-ready student community support space in order to engage students in their own active learning, engage tutors in meaningful service learning, and be a positive bridge between schools and the communities. The VBT program has been structured to connect Virginia Beach school students with a network of trained peers who can support their learning in a variety of selected courses. Virtual tutors can provide an extra layer of academic support for students by reviewing critical concepts and materials from classes, clarifying points of confusion, and developing study strategies for upcoming assessments. The long-range goal for the VBT is to be student-driven and led program. Our purpose as administrators is to lay the initial foundation and structure down, and then have students work from this blueprint, changing or evaluating the program as they see fit. So why virtual peer tutoring? Peer tutoring has been around for a long time. It has been proven to allow for higher rates of student response and feedback, which may result in better academic achievement. It also creates more opportunities for students to practice specific skills, which may lead to better retention of information. Student tiers can gain a deeper understanding of a topic by teaching it to other students. Tutors also, can develop empathy for others, increase their engagement in the academic process, and tutors can encourage or have higher levels of thinking. From a social-emotional standpoint, peer tutoring often helps students build relationships and can assist in practicing appropriate social interaction in this virtual space. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Carrie Gant to give some background on the creation of the VPT program.
Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Carrie Gant. I'm a teacher at Kellam High School. In January of this year, Virginia Beach City Public Schools, with support from Two Revolutions, invited all VB schools teachers to submit an intent to innovate proposal. Teachers were asked to consider big ideas that aligned with our division's graduate profile And in doing so, they were invited to form or join innovation squads. These squads of teachers were connected with division-level support, funding, and resources, and they were provided opportunities to tell the stories of their innovation to inspire others. The intent to innovate projects vary in type and scale, including everything from tower gardening for first graders to creating a mobile sustainability lab in a school bus for middle schoolers, to developing partnerships between Virginia Beach rec centers and high school PE. While some projects are understandably currently on pause due to COVID-19, quite a few of the projects are thriving and have even developed a greater sense of urgency due to the pandemic. One of these projects, a peer tutoring app, was my proposal that was selected as an intent to innovate project. The innovation coordinator, Megan Raftery, and I had our first meeting to kick off the peer tutoring innovation squad at 3 p.m. on March 13th, just 1 hour after we found out that schools would be closed for 2 weeks. At that meeting, I shared with Megan how peer tutoring began at Kellam High School and how it had evolved to the threshold of going virtual. Little did Megan and I know then that the timing of our meeting on that afternoon would ultimately determine the trajectory of our launch of the virtual peer tutoring program that we are here tonight to present. To provide you all with a brief bit of context, in 2017, Kellam applied for and received an innovative learning grant offered through the Virginia Beach Education Foundation to create a peer tutoring center. The center would provide ongoing and sustainable personalized academic help facilitated by students for students in grades 9 through 12. The intent behind the center was to enable young people to take a more centralized role in their learning, to provide students with a greater voice and influence in owning their learning, and to build capacity for our students to not only excel academically through peer-to-peer learning, but to promote ways for our students to seek to understand each other. Kellam is now in its 4th year of operating its peer tutoring center. We currently have 30 peer tutors on staff, and we serve clients in tutoring sessions offered during academic support blocks, lunch, flex blocks, and after-school hours. What started as an idea 4 years ago to engage our community in sustainable, student-centered, peer-to-peer learning with the potential to expand within our school is now poised, yet again, for virtual expansion across school communities in our school division. Earlier this year, when the Intent to Innovate call went out to teachers to share our big, innovative ideas, this became, for Kellam, our opportunity to launch our peer tutoring center's idea of going virtual with the design and implementation of a peer tutoring app, one that would provide students with immediate and direct access to academic help from a peer tutor, circumventing a traditional and sometimes daunting process for students in asking for help. Across the city, Ms. Jennifer Pisapia at Princess Anne High School and her National Honor Society students also had a similar idea of transforming their traditional model of face-to-face tutoring into a virtual environment that would better serve PA student community through its flexibility and personalization. Together with the assistance of the VB Schools Department of Family and Community Engagement, the Intent to Innovate program, and the Department of Instructional Technology, we have launched Virtual Peer Tutoring, a program with over 200 Virginia Beach City Public Schools virtual peer tutors, one that provides authentic learning experiences for both tutors and tutees, one that implements best practices for fostering dispositions of our graduate profile, and one that builds upon the time-tested model of in-school peer tutoring while propelling it into a timely yet virtual platform designed by students for students. At this time, Jennifer Pisapia is now going to talk about specifics of our virtual peer tutoring program.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. As you can see, the virtual peer tutoring program has its foundations in existing traditional peer tutoring programs in at least 2 Virginia Beach high schools. The virtual peer tutoring program, while a response to COVID-19, is also an opportunity to continue to strive for student-led leadership and to develop the dispositions of the VBCPS graduate profile, both for tutors and for the clients they serve. Each of our peer tutors is required to complete a 2-step training process before they begin tutoring students. There is a synchronous component conducted through Zoom where tutors are walked through the process that is used by tutees to request a tutoring appointment. Tutors are shown how to select the most appropriate tutees, sign up to tutor them, and confirm the appointment. Part 2 of the training is an asynchronous lesson on the use of Schoology conferences and Google Jamboard. The marketing committee, consisting of both students and VBCPS staff members, has created flyers with our registration link that have been distributed via school newsletters, social media, teachers, and school lunch bags. Tutees are able to use the link to request an appointment for tutoring via Google form. Tutors view the spreadsheet from within the peer tutoring Schoology group and select the tutees who are best suited to their academic strengths and availability. Once they have confirmed the appointment with their tutee, they meet at the selected time in a Schoology conference to conduct the tutoring session.
As you can see from the current timeline, the virtual peer tutoring team has been meeting since April to pilot a program that would fit the needs of our school community. As we have increased the exposure of our program to various high schools, we are slowly having an impact on students. In fact, up to the close of September, as Carrie mentioned, we have approximately 200 tutors who have volunteered and have conducted approximately over 40 sessions. While virtual peer tutoring came out of the need for remediation and volunteer opportunities that could be completed online from the beginning, our planning group has had a vision for how the program can be useful, even when schools are fully open. Our goal is to create a completely student-run organization with student leaders making key decisions about how the program will work moving forward. Tutoring is very important, but more important is the leadership skills our students will be developing both as tutors and tutoring clients. Our hope is that students will enter the program as tutoring clients and potentially graduate as leaders of the program, putting the graduate profile skills in action even before graduation. We also hope the virtual peer tutoring story inspires others with innovative ideas to share these ideas, ask for help, and develop solutions that meet the changing needs of VBCPS students. Another virtual and tutoring resource is FEV Tutoring. FEV offers live one-to-one tutoring assistance with on-demand homework help. FEV is available for grades 6 through 12 and is designed to replace the homework help program that we have always had in VBCPS. Students can log on through class links and get on-demand support with homework or schedule sessions with a tutor to work through a subject or concept. FEV has worked with Virginia Beach school leaders to personalize tutoring for each student to create an engaging platform that supports growth. And with that, we will take any questions.
All right, we'll start with Mrs. Melnick and then Mr. Edwards.
Dr. Gant, this has been so wonderful and so successful at Kellum, and I invite my colleagues, once school is back and open, to stop by and see this amazing room that's so visible, right? Almost right when you walk in, glass rooms and tables set up. One of my boys benefited from this tutoring after a long illness, and it is absolutely remarkable. And the fact that Princess Anne and Kellam are taking this to the virtual level. I mean, that need still exists for our students without that visual, every day. So really kudos to you guys. It's really, really remarkable, and thank you. Thank you for being so innovative.
Okay, Mr. Edwards.
The role of the Education Foundation in providing a catalyst for supporting and getting this going, I don't want that to slide by without being exposed and celebrated. And I would encourage you to take this part of the meeting off of the video and get it to the foundation and out to their board members so that they can see what they've done now pending on a system-wide basis, which is just phenomenal. And I think the foundation, and again, that's one more element of leveraging private support to do great things within the division.
Thank you. Mrs. Holtz.
Thank you. This is wonderful. I never heard of this, but now that I have a little relative in middle school, I'm very interested. And I know that the last slide that you showed, it was from the website, but how do you get to that link, from the main page? Because most people wouldn't go directly to that.
So with FEB tutoring, I'm gonna ask Ms. Schubert to step in with that. She has a little bit more background than I do about FEB tutoring.
So there's two different, good evening, everybody. Sorry, there's two different, the FEB tutoring is through the school division, and those are outside school division folks. And if you go to if the children go to their ClassLink homepage, there's a link right off the homepage for students where they can click on that and they can set up an appointment with a tutor. The peer tutoring that we have internally.
Right, that's what I meant.
Okay, so you can answer, no, you can answer that one. But the FEB one is on the ClassLink homepage.
Yeah, well, I'm interested in both, but the one internally is,
Yeah, so virtual peer tutoring, yes, there's a flyer in the website, and then what happens is the information goes to our database, and then students can choose how to pick the certain tutors. So if I'm answering your question, there is a website, and yeah, thank you. We can send you the website, and there's also, and every school has done it differently in this kind of innovation stage. Bayside has a QR code that they're using as well, and so as we start to move forward in this process, we're just trying to find innovative ways to get the message out to all students. You spoke about, I think Ms. Pisapia spoke about putting information into food bags. We put a flyer into beach bags as well, trying to reach different clients to make sure that all students have access to this, specifically students of need, and so that we could reach them. So,
all right, thank you so much. I think it's wonderful.
thank you.
Okay, Ms. Owens and then Mrs. Anderson.
Okay. I won't belabor. I think it's wonderful as well. Could you tell me a little bit about how far the reach has gone so far as students served, like this year as opposed to last year, or if it wasn't really, it was only in a smaller thing last year, and this is the first time it's gone virtual and expand upon kind of that?
So this is brand new. As Carrie and Jen spoke, is really kind of two ideas converging into one. Carrie is working on the app at one point. Jen and myself are having two separate conversations. Dr. Schubert said, well, why don't you guys talk to each other? And so we all talked to each other, and from April to this point, we really worked hard to get it out, specifically over the summer, knowing learning loss, and we were just trying to do something to really help students out. And another concept is like, all these kids are at home, they could help each other find something to do. So we were trying to move very quickly to put all these kids in a space where they could help each other, be productive at the same time. So it's brand new. This summer, we didn't have too many sessions. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. We didn't have too many sessions this summer. But the sessions that we did have were very successful. Students on both ends, we always kind of have a satisfactory to figure out how we can get better. So both ends, they were very satisfied with the tutoring they received and the tutor itself. And then that's kind of the intent here. We're trying to just grow the program, get the word out, so we can get more kids involved.
Okay, Mrs. Anderson?
I have seen it in person at Kellum when I visited Kellum before, and it was really kind of cool to watch it happening. But what I want to know about the virtual tutoring is did you say it's only for 9th through 12th grade?
As of right now, well, middle school too. We're doing middle school to 12th grade.
Oh, you're doing some middle school students
Yes,
as well?
ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
so here's my next question. Is the tutoring for students, for example, Kellum students helping Kellum students, or could it be, once they're in your database, could it be, for example, a Kellum student could be helping someone, say, at First Colonial, or is this
The latter.
system-wide?
Yes, the latter.
Okay.
We first started with just high school to high school,
Mhm.
but then as we've grown, we've expanded it.
No, that's great. And that was, my next thing was ask why couldn't middle school be involved in this? And I think that's really good if we have, like even high school kids could even be helping tutoring some kids in the middle school.
Yes.
So this is great. Thank you.
Anybody else? So we thank our two teachers also for joining us, and we'll certainly, tonight, and we'll certainly do our share to spread the news, the great news. Thank
Thank you.
you. All right, that brings us to interim financial statements. And we have with us tonight Miss Pate. Welcome.
Good evening, Chairwoman Rye, Vice Chairwoman Melnick, school board members, Dr. Spence. For the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020, the overall final revenue trend was favorable with an actual over budget amount of approximately $6.4 million. The Commonwealth of Virginia revenue source was favorable with an actual over budget of approximately $277,000. Our March 31st ADM came in slightly higher than originally budgeted, and we received approximately $957,000 more than budgeted for the special ed regional program. This was offset by basic aid coming in under budget by approximately $699,000. The federal government revenue source was also favorable with an actual over budget of approximately $4.5 million. We saw surpluses in all our federal revenue streams, with impact aid and Medicaid reimbursements being the largest at $3.3 million and $962,000 respectively. The state sales tax revenue source year-to-date was favorable with an actual over budget of approximately $629,000. We did see a decrease from the prior year in the June receipt postings of approximately $988,000. This first graph shows that fiscal year 2020 came in approximately $3.3 million higher than fiscal year 2019. Other revenue sources were also favorable, with an actual over budget of a little over $1 million. And this is due mostly to actuals over budgets in the sale of salvage, stop arm enforcement program, reimbursement for system repairs, indirect cost revenue from grants, a receipt of bond premiums from a general obligation, and a revenue bond refunding by the city, and other smaller surpluses in various areas such as lost and damaged technology, calculators, and heart rate monitors. This next graph shows total revenues by major source in fiscal year 2020. The city contributed 54.7%, Commonwealth of Virginia 33.5%, state sales tax 9.3%, the federal government 2%, and other sources 0.5%. The final expenditure trend for fiscal year 2020 was favorable in all categories. The big factor in this was the reduction in spending as a result of COVID-19. Overall remaining unspent and unencumbered balance was approximately $32.6 million. Mr. Honsecker shared with the board that the city projected a $23 million shortfall in local revenue for fiscal year 2020 due to COVID-19. We conservatively prepared for this shortfall possibility by issuing specific guidelines to control spending through the remainder of the year. Looking at the total expenditures incurred in fiscal year 2020 by category, illustrated in this graph, the instructional category comprised 70.2%, operations and maintenance is 11.4%, pupil transportation is 5%, technology is 5.2%, administration, attendance, and health is 3%, and debt service is 5.2%. As presented on Schedule B1 of your documents, you will find a summary of the reversion back to the city's general fund, the revenue surplus of approximately $6.4 million, and the remaining unspent unencumbered balance of $32.6 million, with all adjustments and prepaid items, amounted to a reversion back to the city of approximately $39 million. This reversion amount includes approximately $463,000 from Green Run Collegiate and approximately $1.35 million from the school athletic fund. The revenues that comprise the city and school board revenue sharing formula came in under budget. Our share of that shortfall is approximately $2.7 million, and that will reduce the $39 million in reversion available for appropriation fiscal year 2021. As mentioned in the September 22nd school board meeting, budget development staff is currently working on potential future uses for these reversion funds, which are to be presented and discussed at the Planning and Performance Monitoring Committee scheduled for October 20th. A resolution outlining the future use of the reversion funds, net of the shortfall in the revenue sharing formula, is scheduled to be presented on October 27th for the board's future consideration for appropriation. The figures presented in the June 2020 financial statements and the results of the revenue sharing formula are unaudited and subject to change. July and August interim financial statements are also included in your board documents this evening. They are being presented as required by Virginia State Code. However, these are abbreviated statements. There are no salaries and benefits for 10-month employees. Encumbrances from prior year have not been brought forward, and there were other adjustments being worked on, so these abbreviated statements are not as meaningful or comparable as the financial statements to be presented to the board for September. This concludes the presentation. I'll be glad to address any questions the board may have.
Reversion. That was a lot, wasn't it?
It is a lot.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the largest, I would say, yes. I think back early on, it's probably been about 7 years ago, it might have been about a $30 million reversion, but this is pretty high.
Okay. Yeah, we were looking
Something to add?
Could you repeat the total amount?
The total reversion is about $39 million.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
let me break it down for you.
yeah, okay.
That 39 million drops to a little over 36 million.
Right.
Because we have to give almost 3 million back because of the revenue sharing formula.
Mm-hmm.
The city told us that we had to protect, we were going to have a shortfall of 23 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we did specific cost-saving measures, budget control measures to make sure that we did save at least that much money or not spend that much money. We also were projecting about a $2 million shortfall from the state. 23 and 2 is $25 million. We also had an excess of revenues, which we couldn't predict, of more than $6 million. $6 million added to $25 million is $31 million. The difference in $31 million and $36 million is $5 million. That's what it had the shortfall from the city, the shortfall from the state. We would have had $5 million of reversion money. So we were lucky. We didn't have those shortfalls, but if we had a reserve of $5 million. So
I wasn't expecting any of those slides, actually. Those were all good. So
And-
we'll keep our fingers crossed, right? Okay.
we expect a favorable response from the city council when we go there. We will provide them this explanation. The city staff already understands it. And so it's a good problem to have.
And good budgeting on your part.
Well, we've got a lot.
But is this one-time money? Are we supposed to be treating this as one-time money? Okay, I just want to clarify that.
This is one-time money. We can't spend it on ongoing things. We can't spend it on salaries, et cetera. It is, you can spend it one time and it goes away. And our recommendations to you when we come with the reversion resolution will be only for one-time expenditures.
Any other questions, including from our Zoom participants?
Well, Dr. Spence, do you have any comments or?
No, I just think it's really important, and we'll have this discussion again. It's slated in your, it's been requested to be added to the workshop on your next agenda. And so we can have more conversation about that, because it is really critically important, as this board knows, because we go through this every year, that folks understand how and why we end up with the reversions that we end up with, and the critical distinctions this year about protecting revenue because we were told to protect revenue, because we were anticipating local and state losses of revenue, and therefore we did not want to end the year not able to pay our bills. And so we'll have more conversation about that then, but in the interim, we want to make sure we restate that money was protected because we were told to understand we were going to be losing local and state dollars, and you need to be able to pay your bills when you get to the end of the fiscal year. And so folks will just need to understand that, and we'll make sure we have more conversation about that. And then we look forward to some dialogue with the PPMC prior to our workshop with the board about our recommendations around those funds and the use of those and yours. And so I'm sure in a standing committee conversation, Mrs. Williams will probably reiterate that if you've got thoughts, please share those with her and your colleagues in the PPMC so that we can have that dialogue with you. And of course, as administration, we'll come with our own set of needs. So we appreciate the opportunity to dialogue about it. Thank you.
Okay.
I have
Well,
one more
wait,
question. Hold
Mrs.
on.
Anderson. Okay.
So this is separate money. This is not COVID relief money, right?
No, we'll have, the first CARES funding was 10.1 million. We just have been informed that I sent you an email last night that we're going to get 11.6 million more in it's part of the CARES Act, but it's given a different acronym. And then we also will get 1.6 million in ESSER and years, and that'll be spelled out for you. We're going to have 3 separate resolutions, which will be the reversion resolution, the 11.6 additional CARES money, and the 1.6 GEAR and ESSER money. So we can keep them separate, but we'll explain all that as we go forward.
Okay.
And we can use those funds and CARES on COVID-related expenditures. The 11.6 million, we have to spend it by the December 30th. So there's a very compressed time frame. And the budget staff and I and Crystal are working on a strategy this week to make sure that we're able to do that.
Our budget department does not win awards for no reason. You are recognized nationally for a reason, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the board, we thank you.
We're surrounded by great people.
So it was good to plant all these seeds so we get our brains working, and we look forward to the upcoming discussions. Thank you.
Thanks.
So now that brings us to Policy Review Committee recommendations, and welcome Mrs. Linetti.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, school board members, and Dr. Spence. I'm Cammie Linetti, School Board Legal Counsel. On behalf of the Policy Review Committee, I'll be recommending 7 policies that were reviewed at the September 17th, 2020 meeting of the Policy Review Committee. Again, as a reminder, we are in a 5-year cycle to review policies, so some of the policies you'll see tonight do not have significant changes, but they did need to be reviewed within the 5-year time period. The first one up is Policy 257, which is staff members as consultants outside the school division. We had recently amended this in 2013. After looking at this, there are no recommended changes. This was just up as a review. So there will be no recommended changes to 257. Are there any questions? Moving on to policy 374. 374 comes under your business section. This is titled New Construction, Additions, Alterations, Naming of Schools or Parts thereof, and Commemorative Displays. I took a look at this and some of the things that are going around the country, and I made some suggested changes to this. Again, we amended this in 2017, so it hasn't been that long since we looked at it. There was a significant change in this happens under section B, which is naming of facilities. I am suggesting, and I suggest to the policy review committee, and they approved that we add a line in the end of this paragraph, which you will all see at the end of paragraph C, which is the school board reserves the right, without cause, to overrule the request to name facilities after a sponsor. Again, my suggestion was, although it may come up in certain recommendations at certain facilities, which can also, a facility can be a building, or it can be parts of a building, or it can be outside portions, stadiums, certain areas of building. I wanted to put that in there because there are recommendations going around the country to change names on that. I wanted to give you the right to make a decision whether you wanted to overrule a decision on a name, and you did not want to have to go back to the community about that. So that recommendation exists now. It's recommended to exist in section B and section C. And again, finally, in section D, also in commemorative locations, I've given you the authority to do that. Again, it's not saying you can't name that, it's just giving you the right as the school board, the ultimate authority to make a decision what is appropriate name for a facility or a portion of a facility. Are there any questions on policy 374? Moving on to policy 382, again, under your business and instructional operations, transportation of disabled students. We have not looked at this since 2014. However, it's a simple statement. At this time, we are not recommending any changes to policy 382. Are there any questions on policy 382? Moving on to policy 4-4. For those of you who participated in some of the VSBA training that had to do on the new federal rules on Title IX, there were significant changes that have happened to the regulations involving how we implement Title IX changes on sexual abuse, sexual harassment in the school division. These came down on very short notice to us. All school divisions had to have this implemented. We were by August 15th, some of the changes that had to come out. We were informed at the beginning of May that we had to do this. We have done a lot of work in this area. And again, if you've not taken the time to learn about this, you may want to spend some time. These are significant changes, again, unfounded mandates coming down from the federal government. The requirements are now that the Title IX regulations are going to look more similar to what you see in higher education. So you see a lot of training going on right now. Policy 4-4 falls under your personnel section. It's entitled Equal Employment Opportunity, Non-Discrimination, Anti-Harassment, and Compliance Officers. I'm not recommending significant changes here, but this is one of the policies that deals with both Title IX, sexual harassment. The only change I'm recommending at this time that I recommend to the Policy Review Committee was an update to a legal reference that was misreferenced under the Virginia Human Rights Act on there. That is the only change. We looked at this in 2018. But again, to make sure we're compliant with the new Title IX regulations, we need to have all of our policies up to date. Are there any questions on policy 4-4? And on the same route, policy 544, this falls under your student section. This has to do with sexual harassment, sexual violence, and inappropriate sexual conduct prohibited for students. There are some more significant changes in this area. Specifically under section B, we need to add a paragraph 2 that talks about when a complaint is filed, the Title IX coordinator, which you've not had significant responsibilities in this area before. The Title IX coordinators will now be taking on a very much more significant role than they have in the past. The Title IX coordinator will now handle the Title IX guidelines, and they'll make a decision as to whether a complaint constitutes a violation or not, and they'll begin the investigation process. Section 4 will also add talking about reports of sexual harassment, sexual violence, and inappropriate sexual conduct should be reported to the school administrators as well as to the Title IX coordinators. And again, we'll give you training later on. A lot of your staff is going through this training right now. Title IX coordinators will then coordinate and oversee the investigations that have to happen, the multiple levels of appeal that happen with that. And there's some other changes that come up in Section C just to make it consistent with some of the rules that we'll be seeing on here. Again, you should be getting more information about that. And if you've not had a chance to see the VSBA training on Title IX, you want to take a look at what's going on in that particular area. Are there any questions on policy 5-44? Moving on to policy 5-66, this is also new student section. It has to do with student directory information. For those who are not familiar with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, we refer to that as FERPA. This is the federal law that requires that we maintain confidentiality of student records. These are very complicated laws that are involved in this particular area. But one of the areas that comes up a lot is what we call directory information. Under FERPA, you may release certain information to the public as designated not being confidential if you have designated as what we call directory information. For those of you who receive that packet of information that comes on the first day of school, one of the things you sign off on is your understanding as to what is directory information, what can and cannot be released. Many of you see the opt-in, opt-out forms that come in. That's where it comes from, this particular law. We need to update some of the policy information under directory information, partially in light of the virtual instruction that we have now, also because of changes in state law. Again, so under Section B, you will see significant changes that we're recommending. I recommend that the definition of directory information is information in scholastic records regarding a student that the school division has determined is unlikely to be harmful if released to a third party. We're changing some of the designations under there, but significant, you'll see we've added subsection 8, which will be recordings of virtual instruction. This was a significant conversation for us starting in the spring as to whether anybody viewing that information, whether that would be considered educational records, and would we have to have permission from other persons to see that. So we're going to go ahead and designate virtual instructional activities as directory information. Also, photographs or digital images, including recordings of educational, school-related sporting, extracurricular events that third parties attended, your football games, your basketball games, those type of things that the public are normally come to. Also, yearbooks, class pictures, playbills, programs for shows, plays, concerts, graduations, or similar school-created publications or advertisements. We have had this in the definitions that were sent out to families for many years. We've not incorporated that in our policy on there. We figure that's standard information. We also put in a subsection C on the release of information. Some of this information has changed how you give notice to this to parents and guardians. We're now going to we're now recommending that the release of directory information will be prior to release of such information. The superintendent or designee or principal shall give notice to parents, legal guardians, adult students by sending home through hard copies or electronic means or other announcements the information about that. Again, this day and age, sending hard copies to individuals, particularly when we're not seeing most of our students, doesn't make sense. So we're going to include the electronic notification. Again, there are also some information here that our principals can give out information as under the direction of the superintendent. There's certain information that we automatically allow them to give out, including whether a student is participating in officially recognized sports, their height, their weight, athletic teams, honors, playbills, programs, show plays, concerts, graduations, similar creative publications, and advertises. Those are all information that we are now considering directory information. Again, we've included this in the notice to the families in the past. We simply haven't had it in our policy. Updating, we've added section F, has to do with release of address, telephone numbers, or email addresses. This was actually a change in state law last year. A student's address, telephone, or email address may be released to students enrolled in the school or to school division employees for educational purposes or school business only after the parent, legal guardian, or minor student or adult student consents in writing. You can, by federal law, designate this information to be available. State law in Virginia requires that you get the parent to opt into that. So we've now recognized that in the particular law. So there are significant changes under our directory information. That is generally how we have been conducting business, but this policy will now be updated to reflect how we do that. Are there any questions on policy 544? 564. Sorry. Policy 744, awards to students. Again, this falls under our community relations. After discussing this, policy review committee noted that the policy had recognized that the school board approves for school community-sponsored awards for students who achieve high academic standing, but they also recognize there were other categories that we should be recognized, and sometimes we do, which include fine arts, dance, or musical accomplishment, outstanding citizen, physical, or athletic accomplishments. This was not reflected in the policy reform. We're recommending that the policy be amended to change that, to reflect that. This time, those were the only policy review committee changes recommended. Are there any further questions?
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Linetti. Standing committee reports. Who would like to go first? Mr. Edwards?
The audit committee met last week and we reviewed a couple of very substantive audit reports, which I would encourage my colleagues to log in and review. And if you have any questions, either contact myself or the other audit committee members, and be happy to discuss them with you. But a lot more than a typical audit committee meeting in terms of the material we had to review. So I think you find it interesting, and again, we'd be very happy to discuss it if you have questions.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Ms. Weems has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Mrs. Weems.
Yes, the Performance and Planning Audit Committee will be meeting October 20th at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Felton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm excited to report to you all that I was appointed to a task force on students in schools in challenging environment, and with the collaborative work with myself and President Brown, who is the regional president, we presented this task force information to the regional VSBA. They will be highlighting this information at our annual conference. And I'd just like to say that I'm really proud of this work because, as Mrs. Milnick has stated before, we are recognized highly by the regional and the state. And they take on, when the tasks that they take on, they use us as an example. I'd also like to thank Dr. Spence for his time in collaborating and giving us information. Ms. Allen and also Dr. Alexander Adman for helping in this initiative. This task force information and presentation will be highlighted in our next annual conference, and I hope that you'll be there to celebrate us on, to know that you were part of this great movement. Also, I'd just like to place in your hearing that on October the 28th, we will be having our regional meeting for the VSBA. You should be getting this information via email, and you're participating in this conference as well. As you know, we've had our challenges and our uphill climb with a lot of things, but this will be via Zoom, and I hope to see all y'all there on October the 8th at the regional VSBA meeting. October 28th. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a lot of good information. Governance, continuing work with the superintendent evaluation. You'll be hearing more about some possible modifications to the evaluation instrument when the committee is ready to share that. And likewise with norms and protocols, continuing to work through that. And the January retreat, which I mentioned at the last workshop, but I will get out an email just to be sure that I can hear back from each of you to confirm that we are locking in that date, the end of January. And I don't want to misspeak because I don't have it planted in my head, but I think it's the last Tuesday in January that so with that, anybody else before we, okay, Mrs. Melnick.
Last week, the CSEP Regional Board and the Governor's School Regional Board met, and you can imagine the daunting task of that reopening plan too, with Governor's School, with all of the different divisions. But Carlos Clanton is now the chair of Governor's School Regional Board, and I am the vice chair. So, and the legislative committee will meet October 20th at 11 o'clock. If you'd like to join us there, we'll be talking about our upcoming legislative agenda to be presented to our legislators. And let me know if you'd like to attend, and I'll send you a Zoom link. Thank you.
Okay, I think that covers it. Okay, so with that, we are concluding the suspending the formal meeting for now. We'll be returning to it for continued workshop. But now we are on item 15, hearing of citizens and delegations on non-agenda items. So I'll go ahead and read